history of Ezomo of Uzebu. The Ezomo title up to the time of Oba Akenzwa I. The Ezomo title had been given at the discretion of the Oba to any notable warrior. It was Oba Akenzwa I that now made the title hereditary to the family of Ihenua. Eweka first was the creator of the Chancellor of the States of Kingmakers, afterwards known as Uzama Niro, V. Ulia, Ezomo, Eru, Eolo, and Oloton. Later, the Edaiken was classified with them by the Oba Ewari Decree, thus bringing the number to 7. These titles are all hereditary, passing from father to son. Ewari reorganized the government by centralizing it, and he set up 3 powerful palace associations of chiefs. The political elite of the kingdom was made up of titled chiefs and members of the royal family. The 7 highest ranked chiefs, who were in fact descendants of original elders of Benin, were constituted into Uzama with leadership authority next to the king. The Ezomo title is in the society of Iwebo, the makers and custodians of the Oba's regalia and wardrobe. This is the first and foremost of all the houses in the royal house. The honor of membership, but without duties, is conferred on the Edohe, Ezomo, Eru, Leolo, Edaiken, and Eson. All Europeans are also counted as members with the Wagwe as its leader. The Ezomo was the generalism of the Benin army. Many of the Ezomos have been renowned warriors. They delight in warfare as a hungry man delights in his food. The Ezomo and the Ero had important executive function, but collectively played a smaller part in the day-to-day running of the state. The Ezomo, in certain respects, stands apart from all other Benin chiefs, and while not the highest in formal rank, it must in many ways be regarded as next to the Oba in prestige and status. Third in formal order of presidency among the Uzamas, the Ezomo had long been the wealthiest and most influential of them when Benin Kingdom was captured in 1897. He lived in a semi-independent state in his own town of Uzebu, just outside the inner wall of Benin's kingdom, where he kept a court, which was smaller and a similar version of that of the Oba. He also ruled the subject without interference from above. Apart from the Oba Iyoba, Oba's mother, and the Edaiken, Oba's heir, the Ezomo alone is permitted to wear a coronet of beads. His wives, like the Obas, are called Iloi and subject to similar restrictions and rules of conduct. These and other more attributes of kingship set him apart from the other chiefs. On most important ceremonial occasions, the Ezomo and Edaiken support the Oba's arms on each side. This group is said to be illustrated in many bronze casts. The Ezomo's children were also known as princesses and princes, as that of the Oba. Like the Oba, the Ezomo is referred to as Omo, child. The following privileges were granted. Title of the Ezomo made hereditary. The wearing of a coronet of royal beards. The authority to have sword bearers, a mudia, with brass anklet. The wives of the Ezomo to be called Eloi, like the Oba's wife, and subject to similar restriction and rules of conduct. The conferment of titles in Uzebu village, which was already in practice by other members of the Uzama in their villages. Did the granting of these privileges, which equals the Ezomo with the Oba, suggest strong evidence of the royal link Enwa? Or did the Ezomo Enwa, as a warrior and commander of the loyalties forces, forced Oba Akezwa forced to compromise some of his powers? The Ezomo honed his preeminence of the fact that he was a supreme war chief, conducting most of more important campaigns of the Oba's behalf. As a result of these campaigns, and the fact that the title was hereditary by primogeniture without any division of property, successive Ezomos were able to accumulate much wealth, especially in forms of slaves, who were put to work in farms. Their wealth and influence was further extended by the fact that they administered a large number of villages and visual chiefdom, from which they derived tribute and services, in addition to those that they organized, and collection from the Oba. The Ezomo, as the regular generalism of the state, is pictured as in tradition being essentially loyal to the Oba. Two facts contributed to the emergencies of the Ezomo as head of war commanders. First, although the Iyase Node was living in exile, the war against him by Akezwa first dragged on, and this led to the declaration of a special vigilance on him. The Iyase's absence from command post of the Benin army provided the Ezomo Enwa the opportunity to take over his role as commanders-in-chief of the army. Second, Akembo, who became the next Iyase after Ude, was not a warrior but one of the most successful traders. In theory, the Iyase Akembo was the commander-in-chief of the army, but in practice, the role was taken over by the Ezomo Enwa and his descendants. Politically, the Iyase was the highest title of the state and had not been made hereditary in any family. He was the only chief that had the right to argue with or censure the Oba in public. In tradition, he was portrayed as the focus of opposition to the power of the Oba. The importance of his office is demonstrated by the fact that all state chiefs were inducted by the Iyase on the instructions of the Oba. The Iyase had the privilege of marrying the Oba's eldest daughter. On the other hand, the Ezomo was third in the rank of Uzama, and only in the 19th century did the military position of the Ezomo began to be equated with that of the Iyase. In restructuring the command structure of the army, several factors were involved: personal, political, and strategic factors combined to influence the change and possibly avoid the concentration of military force offices in one order of chiefs. The choice of the second in command to each of the chief war commander was also based on considerations that were politically or personal rather than strategic. The aim was to maintain a balance between competing groups and individuals. All war all commanders, except the Ezomo, was subordinate to the Iyase, who himself was practically independent of the Ezomo. The Iyase was generally dispatched on important campaigns. If the Iyase had to go to war, he left the walls of Benin as the head of the military force. He could become possessed of full powers and could put to death anyone he chose, even the Oba's personal servants. Whether successful or unsuccessful, he rarely returned to Benin, but stayed to rule the conquered territories. Although he could be sent on further expeditions at the Oba's will. In Benin politics, the Iyase was a strong factor in deciding political coalitions, a factor which was also reflected in his military power. The top 4 military officers in Benin army were the Iyase, the Ezomo, the Edogun, and the Ologbosere. 3 were all hereditary positions, except the Iyase, whose role in the state was first political. This meant that apart from the Iyase, the others were not appointed by or entirely dependent on the Oba. Within their ranks, the Oba could not foster competition to his favors. Though the Oba had considerable room for maneuver in exercising his prerogatives for the appointment of the Iyase. The loyalty of the Iyase was not guaranteed. In tradition, the Iyase, argues Branbury, was regularly portrayed as the focus of opposition to the Oba's power. As a result, political factions tended to gather around the Oba and the Iyase. As an Uzama Nihiron, tradition identifies the Uzamas as with the elders whose request resulted in Oramihia being sent from Ife to found the Benin dynasty. Strictly speaking, this refers to the first 5 titles. As the elders of the state, they take up the position of greatest honor at palace rituals, directly facing the Oba. In ceremonial salutations, through which all chiefs reaffirm their loyalty, the Uzamas are last to make obeisance and the first to receive the Oba's kola nut and palm wine.